Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Sherrone Moore, the Michigan Wolverines, kicking off their spring game on Saturday afternoon. Want to dive into a few storylines and things that we're really going to be watching for as Michigan goes through the spring game. We'll hop on right afterwards, break down what we saw. Really excited to get into this one. As a Michigan fan myself, this is probably the most excited I have been for a spring game in a very long time. You talk about new coaching staff, a ton of young players really getting their first opportunity, a ton of different position battles. I'm fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. Massive shout out to the Michigan fans. It has been a blast talking this program this offseason. The amount of support you guys continue to show to the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear some of your predictions for breakout performers on Saturday. I'll give you guys some of mine. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And when it can't bury the lead here, the biggest storyline for this Michigan spring game going to be at the quarterback position. And I'll tell you guys what I'm looking for, and I think a lot of you guys are looking for as well, based on the comments that I get when we talking some Michigan football, and that is what quarterback shows the highest command of the offense. And yes, do you want to see flashy plays, big time throws? Yeah, absolutely. But I think what the coaching staff's looking for, I think what a lot of us are looking for is what quarterback comes out and runs this Michigan offense the way it is supposed to be ran? What quarterback is going through the progressions, getting the ball out on time, accurately, where it's supposed to go? And for a guy like Alex Orji, who sounds to be kind of the leader in the clubhouse for that quarterback one spot, we know the upside that he brings. We know the flash that he can bring to this Michigan offense. I think the big question for a lot of us Michigan fans is, hey, can you, from a down-to-down basis, operate this offense, make sure you're making the checks, making the throws that you need to make? That's the biggest question mark we have with Alex Orji. And if you do see Alex Orji come out and have command and execute at a high level, I think a lot of Michigan fans are going to be fired up for what this offense is going to look like in 2024. One other thing that I'll note is kind of interested to see if the offense fundamentally changes based on what quarterback is running the offense. We kind of talked about if Alex Orji's your starting quarterback, the offense might look a little bit different than if Jack Tuttle's your starting quarterback. So kind of interested to see that dynamic in terms of we're going to see a lot of Michigan quarterbacks play. Does the offense change based on what quarterback is in and what quarterback is out? Now, moving to the running back room, that's probably where I have my eyes on next. And two things I want to talk about. One, this is the first offseason where Donovan Edwards has been fully healthy I think since he's been a Michigan Wolverine. So I think that's really exciting for a lot of Michigan fans. But I think what we're most keyed in on is, how does Donovan Edwards get used in this offense? What is Khalil Mullings like? How does the workload seem to be shaken out? Benjamin Hall going into year two, Cole Cabana. You got a lot of really talented running backs and a lot of running backs that do some different things. And I think we talked about one of the more exciting things that we are looking forward to with Kirk Campbell calling this offense is the personnel usage. And I'm really excited to see and kind of get the first sense of how these running backs are going to get utilized in this Michigan offense. We've been talking about the two running back sets. We've been talking about using Dono as a slot wide receiver. We're going to get our first chance to get a feel of how these guys are going to get used on Saturday afternoon. And the pass catcher department, two guys that I'm really going to keep my eyes on, right? So we have Tyler Moore, Samaj Morgan. I think we know what those guys bring to the table. We clearly know what Colston Loveland brings to the table for Michigan at the tight end spot. The two guys that I'm most looking forward to seeing play, Frederick Moore at the wide receiver spot. I mean, us Michigan fans, we've been banging the table for the last couple of weeks and certainly the last couple of days as the transfer portal has been open. Got to get a boundary wide receiver that can win vertically down the field. Now, if Michigan does not go into the portal to address that position, I think Freddie Moore would probably be that guy that does it for Michigan. 6'1", averaged 23 yards per reception coming out of high school. So he knows how to work down the field. He's got the frame. He's got a track background. Going into year two, can Freddie Moore give that kind of wide receiver to this Michigan offense? And then the second guy I'm looking for is Marlon Klein. It's no secret, Michigan likes to run 12 personnel, two tight end sets. We know we have the best tight end in the country in Colston Loveland, And I think one of the more slept on positions on this Michigan roster the last couple of years has been that tight end 2 spot. You go back to AJ Barner, he was phenomenal for us in 2023. You go back 2 years ago to Luke Schoonmaker or Colson Loveland, whoever you're calling tight end 2 in that offense. The second tight end of this Michigan offense has always been extremely productive and extremely valuable to this Michigan offense. Marlon Klein, you're getting some rave reviews. He's going into year 3. We knew he was going to be a little bit of a project. He comes from Germany. This is a guy that hasn't played that much football until he got to Michigan, but we did know that he was a freak athlete. So he's been 2 years in the program, going into year 3. What does Marlon Klein potentially look like at that tight end 2 spot? You have a guy in Zach Marshall. You have 2 true freshmen that are going to be participating in Hanson and Prescorn, who also could be guys for this Michigan team. I'm really excited to see who steps up at that tight end 2 spot. But from what you've been hearing from that spring practice window is Marlon Klein seems to be the real deal. Now, looking at the offensive line, I think this will be the starting offensive line with one caveat. I think Miles Hinton could be playing left and Andrew Gentry playing right tackle. Miles Hinton, I think, is the surefire starter. I think you got a couple surefire starters. I think Miles Hinton's a surefire starter. Giovanni El-Hadi, probably Greg Crippen. And then I'm interested to see what Josh Preeb looks like coming from Northwestern. And then that tackle position battle, right? Andrew Gentry, I think, is probably the leader in the clubhouse and probably has the higher upside. But I'm kind of excited to see a few other guys, Tristan Bounds, Evan Link, some young guys that have been marinating in the program for a little bit. What do they look like heading into 2024? But I think largely what we see on the screen is kind of how this offensive line is going to shake out. And Michigan fans know more than anyone else. Everyone wants to say, oh, Michigan lost pretty much every start. Not pretty much every single starter to the NFL drafts. Michigan fans are saying, yeah, we know we have some dogs, though, coming up underneath those guys. I think this Michigan offensive line is going to be just fine. You move to the defensive side of the football, and I think the first thing I want to talk about is on the defensive line, and it's the depth, right? And you guys have kind of heard me say that throughout spring practice. Derek Moore, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Josiah Stewart is, in my mind, the best starting defensive line that you see throughout the country. But I go back to what made Michigan so special in 2023, and it was the depth that they had on the defensive line. Not only did they have NFL guys as their starters, you had guys like Jalen Harrell, Braden McGregor, Chris Jenkins, Rayshawn Benny. I mean, they're too deep on the defensive line. Last year, we're all pretty much NFL caliber guys. And so you lose some of those guys, your depth kind of goes away. I think the question is, we know we got dogs in our starting defensive line. That is, again, the best starting 4 defensive line that you see in the country. I think the question for us Michigan fans are, all right, what's the depth going to look like this year, right? Cameron Brandt, you're hearing some really good reviews from him. TJ Guy, hearing really good things from him. You got guys like Eno Eddick going into year 2. Yes, I want to see Derek Moore, Josiah Stewart, Mason Graham, Kenny G. I want to see them ball out. I'm more going to be keyed in on some of the reserve guys, the depth guys that are going to be playing a lot and playing a big role in this Michigan defense heading into 2024. You move back to the linebacker spot. Some of y'all said this in the comments section. I was really intrigued by it. Jayshawn Barham, how are we going to use him at that linebacker spot? Because this is a guy that can come off the edge and blitz. And I kind of am excited to see, yes, he's probably going to play primarily off-ball linebacker in third and long situations. Do we maybe have Jayshawn Barham work off the edge? Are we going to blitz him a little bit more? We like to blitz our linebackers. I think Jayshawn Barham is an elite blitzer coming from Maryland. I don't know how much blitzing you'll see during the spring game because you normally kind of play some vanilla defense. I wouldn't mind seeing Jayshawn Barham. You can take the leash off him a little bit for a couple of reps and let him get after the quarterback. Interested in that. You move to the secondary, probably the biggest question mark that we have on this Michigan defense. I took some major heat in the comments section the other day for saying Michigan should consider taking a cornerback in the transfer portal. We're going to get our answer to that this year, or this Saturday, I should say. Very similar kind of sequence that happened last year where we didn't take a cornerback during the winter portal. We go through spring practice. We're kind of putting our chips into a guy like Amarian Walker. Doesn't necessarily work out. So what does Michigan do? Quick pivot. They bring in Josh Wallace from UMass. And that worked out beautifully for Michigan. I think for Michigan, again, I think you're going to see a similar situation where we're going to trot out Jair Hill and DJ Waller, see if those guys are going to be ready to play high-level football for Michigan in 2024. If they are, then I'll back off my take and say, hey, we don't need a cornerback if Jair Hill and DJ Waller are those guys. But if they do look kind of like Amarian Walker did last year, it probably wouldn't hurt to go get a veteran cornerback. So for the guys, the Michigan fans that were frustrated with me a couple days ago, I understand it. We'll kind of get our answer on Saturday afternoon. We'll circle back to that conversation. Now, another thing that I'm looking for in the secondary is, what's the puzzle piece look like? And what I mean by that is we got a lot of really good players, but I'm not really sure where everyone slots in, right? We know Will Johnson is going to play the boundary. We know Makari Page is going to be one of those safeties. Rod Moore goes down with injury. What does the nickelback role look like? I could see a couple of guys playing nickel, right? Jaden McBurrows certainly could do that. Zeke Berry certainly could do that. Braden Hillman and Quentin Johnson, where they kind of slotted in at the cornerback spot. Is Jaden McBurrows working at nickel or is he working at boundary cornerback? You got questions not necessarily about how good our players are. More importantly, where are we going to put them? And how are we going to put this puzzle piece together? I think very similar to the conversation you have with an offensive line where how can we get the best five on the field? I think that's your conversation now. So what does the puzzle look like in terms of getting our best five defensive backs on the football field at the same time? Does that include Zeke Berry at a safety spot? Does that include Zeke Berry at the nickel? I think those are the two guys you're looking at. Zeke Berry, is he playing safety? Is he playing nickel? And then Jaden McBurrows, is he playing nickel or is he working in at a boundary cornerback spot? Those are probably the questions that we have in the secondary. I'm fired up for this one. We'll obviously talk about this a lot. Saturday afternoon, right after the game, we'll be hopping on, talking about what we saw. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys. Oh, breakout players. I'm going to go breakout players for offense, Marlon Klein. My breakout player for defense, I'm going to go with Eno Etta on the inside. This was a guy that I love coming out of high school. Really excited about what he looks like at 295 pounds. I also throw in Zeke Berry, another guy that I loved out of high school. I love my recruiting, root for my high school kids. Would love to hear some breakouts for you guys as well. And if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.